Geht's los. So, good morning everybody and welcome to the Frequentis booth on the Dubai Airport Show in the United Arab Emirates. I have the pleasure of presenting you the TARPAD and thereby touching A-SMGCS and integrated controller working position topics. And to first better understand what TARPAD does, you should be aware it's a trajectory management system. And as you can see at an airport, we've got multiple resources. We've got airspace, runways, taxiways and stands. And an aircraft journey across these resources is then expressed by trajectories. And we've got the inbound part, where an aircraft is cleared to land or to enter the control zone, touches down on the runway, vacates, taxis to the stand. And then we've got the turnaround process, where we also have, let's say, like ACDM connections, departure sequencing, clearance delivery functions that support this turnaround process and the release of the aircraft so they can continue with the outbound trajectory, leaving the gate, push back, engine startup, taxiing, lining up, or runway crossing, whatever is required, and then getting back to the airspace and onwards journey. Today this is a very manual process, meaning that we have a lot of, let's say, talking and pressing buttons, moving things around, having multiple systems to interact with. Each of these resources managed by its own system. And when the trajectory management is not done in a very right or very well way, we have a lot of effects. And these are due to the lack of automation, because the support for the human controller is rather limited. And one typical effect is that we have safety issues, either because of a pilot error or a conformance failure. Could also be that a controller was giving the wrong clearance or has overseen certain elements of the traffic situation. Similar, we have, of course, an efficiency and thereby an environment issue. So we have queuings, stop and goes, that cause the aircraft to be late on time, on schedule, and also having a lot of pollution and emissions. Then we also have a capacity issue, because the runway may not be fully utilized. We have runway occupancy time issues sometimes. The sequencing may be not optimized, ending up in holding stacks, for example. Especially in low-vis operations, when the runway cannot be fully utilized, or because of the taxiways, we have some queuings or ground delays or airborne delays. And finally, one way of solving the problems is to increase the manpower, to have more working positions staffed. This is also increasing the coordination effort and, of course, the cost effectiveness, which could be expressed in terms of controller productivity. So to solve those issues, we need more automation. And so these automation functions I'm going to introduce are there to support the trajectory management process. And what we need to do is to support the controller in managing multiple trajectories. At large airports, we have more than 1,000 movements a day, could be sometimes hundreds an hour. Some controllers easily have to handle 30, 40 movements an hour easily. So what needs to be done? We need to support the multi-trajectory management process. And there are three distinctive stages. One is the planning stage, where the trajectories have to be planned. We've got the execution phase, where the controller really manipulates the trajectories by means of clearances or other control elements. And then the monitoring part, to make sure that the plan is actually working out. And to support these distinctive functions, we support certain support. For example, we need to highlight the information which is relevant for the controller right now. And that depends, of course, on the role of the controller, the current traffic situation. So it's highly context sensitive. Similar, we have to arrange the information the right way, so you don't have to search for information. And finally, to filter, because we have so many information available, and showing them all at the same time is overloading, and it takes too much time just to filter and find the right information. On the execution side, we support the controller by giving proposals. For example, a taxi route, for example, in this case, you have an A380 taxiing to that runway in use. Under these operating conditions, that is the preferred or standard taxi route. Could be different for a 777 or a A320 for that runway configuration, low-vis. So there are a couple of thousand different route combinations, for example. And to come up with the right proposal, take into account the current traffic situation, restrictions like closed areas, and even the, let's say, if you have opposite traffic, is very helpful. We also present options, for example, a pushback. If you want to give a pushback, you have, let's say, east or west options, but the west may be not okay for a Dreamliner, might be okay for an A320. Because of an inbound taxiing, you shouldn't do this right now because you're blocking other traffic. So the options are presented to the controller, and once the input has been done by the controller, we need to verify So we provide an immediate feedback. If you are going to do this right now, this will cause this and this problem, like blocking an inbound or resulting in a potential critical clearance on the runway. And the third and final stage is the monitoring, which we have to make sure that the controller can check that everything is compliant. So each, let's say, the operating procedures, which are also applicable to pilots, like speeds and stuff like that, are adhered to present the actual status of the entire systems, so that we know that the automation function is alive and the connected systems are also working fine. And then, of course, alerting if things don't go out or don't go as expected, like a route deviation or non-conformance on clearances. And all these functions are then presented to the controller in a very, as I said, context-sensitive way. So what we do is we provide all those functions on one single screen, so which is then called the integrated controller working position. And as discussed or as mentioned previously, it's not to overload the controller. It's make sure they really get only those information and support those actions which are required according to the current workflow. And on the one side, we provide, let's say, basic capabilities. These are the ones which are traditional functions like clearance delivery, display of metadata, nav-aid status, even the manual or conventional airfield lighting control capabilities for switching intensities and all that stuff. But the more important part is, of course, the advanced capabilities, which are also in the ICAO ASPO elements listed. And these include the top four on the right: the guidance service, the routing service, the safety support service, and the electronic clearance input. These refer to A-SMGCS. The other ones, the red ones and the yellow below ones, are also, of course, included. And everything together then forms up this, what we call an integrated controller working position. And to give you an idea how this works, we had set up a demo here, and some of you will, I have the pleasure to show it to you, but for those who can't see it, there you see a picture of a controller. And the interesting element, I think, is you see the empty monitor arms where the screens from the previous systems have been attached to, and you work with one single screen. It looks fairly easy, but that's the idea of automation, to make the life easier. So it looks like you're controlling a regional airport, but in fact it's a busy international airport. And the question is, of course, what do controllers think about that? I mean, and of course management, somebody has to pay the bill. And some controllers say, well, I need conventional systems. Sorry, there's an announcement right now. I try to speak louder. First of all, there's a feedback from one of our controllers who has been fully trained and certified on the tower pad. And Andrew, for example, said that he said, I can go non-standard at a higher level of safety. And non-standard means shortcutting. It's more efficient. It's a better efficiency. Standards are great, of course, gives confidence to pilots and controllers, but sometimes you can improve a situation. And to go non-standard increases the coordination effort, the situational awareness requires more cognitive resources, but he said he can do so. It's easy. So, and this is where you have a big efficiency gain, because controllers start to shortcut, to improve the situation. They have more time for planning and for thinking. Another thing is that, let's say, if he gets traffic handed over to his area of responsibility, he can already see if the conflict has been deconflicted by his adjacent controllers, for example. So he says he can see, I don't have to take care for that, it's already resolved, which gives him more time to focus on other aspects of the traffic. And also, even if it's really busy, he said that he knows exactly what's going on, because the current status, the planning and the monitoring functions support him in checking that everything is running as expected. And similar, like Donovan, also fully trained on the tower pad, said that he has much more time now to plan ahead at pre-tactical level. Traditionally, you are in a kind of ad hoc mode, always responding in a busy situation. But with the tower pad, they say they can do all the pre-planning up front, and then just monitor how their plan is being executed automatically, which gives them more time to look further ahead, like chess playing. You don't look just 1 or 2 moves ahead, you can look 3, 4, 5 steps ahead, which is also an important factor for increasing the efficiency. And then, because of the reduced communication time, we're using a follow the greens approach, which controls the lights automatically for the aircraft to guide them along the airfield. They have much more time for scanning the situation to see what's going on, the monitoring part we are supporting here. And finally, the workflow is supported. And we saw that Donovan, but also Andrew, were saying, I can handle more traffic. So controller productivity was greatly enhanced by the tower pad. Well, these are qualitative feedbacks. Of course, we did measurements on certain questionnaires, human factor questionnaires, and it showed improved situational awareness by up to 80% or workload reduced by 50%. So these are really great achievements. But what does this mean operationally? And there were independent research projects have evaluated the tower pad, and they came to the conclusion that the safety is improved under all conditions. CAVOC is the good visibility conditions, and LVC is the bad visibility conditions, like nighttime and fog. Predictability, you know what's coming up. It's not a surprise. But important, the communication time, the RT load, was cut on in half, and this makes a lot of workload for the controllers and the pilots. And as you can see, the taxi time was reduced by 20% in good conditions, but by 40% in bad conditions. And in fact, they reached the same level. So taxi time, there was no difference between good and bad visibility conditions. And similar to that, we have the taxi interruptions. These are the stop and goes in low visibility operations. For example, you have to provide more spacing under normal conditions. But with TowerPad, we could cut down the stop and goes by 40%, and in low vis close to 70%. We had even movements, most of the movements were continuous without a single stop. And in direct correlation with the taxi time, of course, the fuel burn and the carbon dioxide emissions have been cut down significantly. And well, these are operational benefits. And what is this now in terms of commercial benefits? And of course, we looked at, let's say, a medium-sized airport, medium traffic density levels according to ICAO classification, a simple layout, just one runway, more than 2 taxiways, and more than 1 apron, but operating under Cat 3 conditions, for example, where the pilots have to be supported because the visibility might be getting low quite a lot. And we assume 10 days of low-vis operations a year, which is not that much. We have in Europe sometimes 30, 40, 50 days, and other countries might be less, but 10 I think is a reasonable assumption. And what our commercial assessment indicated is that we have an overall savings per year of about 40 million euros on different aspects, on safety, capacity, efficiency, environment, and cost effectiveness. And most of the benefits are on the efficiency by reducing delays, but still worth mentioning, still the safety can be improved quite a lot. There are a lot of statistical costs, or where we have, let's say, like insurances and stuff like which you have to pay. But overall, by having a 40 million euro benefit in a year is quite something. So controllers feel better, pilot like it a lot, operational improvement goes up, and this translates directly in commercial benefits for, let's say, a quite, I think, simple, medium-sized airport. Now, what does the TowerPad comply with? There's a lot of confusion, maybe not confusion per se, but there's a lot of terms like implementation levels from ICAO. The ICAO Doc 9830 is, 9830, still a very important document, was released in 2004. On the, let's say, x-axis, you have surveillance, control, routing guidance. You can think of that as the automation levels, which are increasing, and then the automation functions level 1 to level 5, which you can think of, let's say, the aerodrome complexity. And here you can see that, let's say, level 2 covers certain control functions, level 3 covers the routing part, and level 4 covers the follow the greens aspect, and level 5 also includes the onboard guidance. And TowerPad covers all of them, so it's fully compliant with the ICAO document. A more recent document from ICAO is the Global Air Navigation Plan, which has about 40 threats, and one important threat for us, for TowerPad, is the surface. And it has divided these kind of, let's say they call this ASPU elements. These are improvement modules into blocks, which are 5-year time slots. And I grade out those ASPU elements which refer to the, let's say, vehicle and cockpit onboard system, which we don't address, but of course we interface with them. But all of these which are relevant to the ground-based system is what TowerPad fully covers and is compliant with. And the most recent document we have come across is the Eurocontrol specification 171 for A-SMGCS services. They don't talk about levels anymore, but it's pretty much similar. We have surveillance, routing, guidance. Important thing is that the ICAO, so the Eurocontrol document also addresses the HMI explicitly and says that clearance inputs is part of that because of the enhanced safety net. And TowerPad incorporates its own electronic clearance input, but we can also cooperate with flight strips like those from Frequentis, so it can be an external system. And all of this is what the TowerPad is compliant with. So that's the good news. We didn't reinvent the wheel, we just implemented the wheel in a, I think, very nice way. And one of my last slides is, of course, there's a change in operational mode. The controllers are now transformed into kind of a management position. And of course, everybody needs to gain confidence with the system. You have to build up trust. And this requires a different training approach. And we came across new concepts for training, which are established in the cockpit for 20 years, 10, 15 years. And we adopted those, let's say, training principles for highly automated environments, which today is not the case. So today's controller training is very traditional, very, let's say, manual, and it's not fit for purpose for the level of automation which is coming up and which our TowerPad introduces. So this is why we have our own training concept and training syllabus developed. So TowerPad is not just for the very big airports. It can be scaled down to various levels or automation services. And maybe one last example is that we have also a TowerPad regional version, which is more or less applicable for small and medium airports, where you have maybe an ADS-B-based surveillance equipment, where you have video camera insets, and you put things also into one integrated controller working position. But you can still have multiple. It's up to you. So we don't restrict the choice. But I'm just saying the TowerPad component per se supports the video integration. It has certain daemon elements, so it can also be used by regional or small airports. So thank you very much for your attention. In case you want to contact us, my colleague here in the Middle East is Josef. Please feel free to contact him. And for other queries, please feel free to contact my colleague Peter Hardy. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
Welcome from Dubai. My name is Peter Griedling and I have the pleasure to introduce you in the topic of remote tower and the different references we have already worldwide. So what you see behind me is our remote tower system. So here it's the airport of Auckland, and the remote tower system basically consists of two major components. First of all, the out of the window view, which you can see on those three screens. We are providing a view up to 360 degrees, seamlessly stitched together so that the controller has a view as close as possible to the human eye as he knows today from the out of the window view. The other tool, what you can see here, the indication and what I can also move, is the so-called pan-tilt zoom camera. So the pan-tilt zoom camera replaces the binoculars. So if the controller wants to do a landing gear check or so, then he uses the pan-tilt zoom camera, which is a movable camera and which basically supports the controller in following an aircraft. And now, since we have replaced those major tools from the air traffic controller, you can gain and get benefit out of the technology. And what you see here on the right side are different augmented reality overlays. So you see here, for example, the yellow eye, the indication of the pan-tilt zoom camera. You also see inserted weather data directly in the field of view of the controller. You also see here the so-called surveillance labels. So here I have the possibility to connect the surveillance system and match the position of the surveillance system with the position in the camera view and provide different data coming from the surveillance system directly beside the specific aircraft. In this case, only a simple call sign, but of course you can also add different data like the direction, altitude, speed, whatsoever. So all those features should support the air traffic controller in their daily work and to reduce the workload. What you also see here are some static overlays, like here on the right side, this marked area. So here you also are in the position to mark different areas, obstacles, whatsoever. So during the day, this is a nice feature, but it's not so helpful at all. But think about night or low visibility conditions, then the situation changes dramatically. And that's what I would like to show you. So if we have a look to the same situation but during night, then you can see here now that the overlays gives a major benefit to the controller. So basically here he can see the runway marked, he can see the taxiways marked, and of course with the surveillance systems here on the left, he can easily identify aircrafts which are taxiing over there. Without all those surveillance labels, he wouldn't be able to see that so smoothly. So if I switch all these features off, then you see it's much more harder to identify all those aircrafts. Now, we have here the possibility to mark aircrafts, but when we are talking about other objects like persons, vehicles, or animals, for example, then of course they cannot identify it here with the visual cameras. But therefore, we are providing also the technology of infrared cameras right in the system. And here I give you an example. So what you can see here on this scenario is a direct comparison between visual cameras and infrared cameras as we have installed it at Saarbrücken Airport. So here you see in the upper part, you see what the visual camera sees, and of course, you can see all lightened objects. So here, in the final approach, you see the aircraft with the landing lights on. You see here also the apron areas, which are lightened by the floodlight. But if you consider this area here, the grass area, you can't identify if there is an animal or person or vehicle. But with the infrared technology, if you look into this area here, then you can clearly see that there is no animal, no vehicle, no person or whatsoever. And so you can identify threats even during night and low visibility conditions with the use of infrared technology. Another big advantage is that we have now all the data in electronic form in the system. And I would like to show you an additional benefit of remote tower technology. So since we have all video streams now in electronic form, we are also able to analyze the data. And what you see here on the middle screen, that is that the system automatically identifies all moving objects, including a small drone, for example, and the system is immediately in the position to identify the threat and to bring the situational awareness of the air traffic controller to the specific threat by marking the threat, and in this case with the red bounding box, the drone. So here, this is an additional safety feature of our system. And now, since we have identified the object, we can also apply an additional logic to the overall system. So in the next example, I can show you how you can use this detection with our visual safety net. So for airports which don't have surveillance in place, you can use the technology to identify incidents. So here we have marked with the red bar a virtual stop bar. And now this aircraft, which is a known object, is passing this stop bar without permission, and immediately the object itself is marked as red, and also the overall runway is marked as red, so that the controller is immediately informed that something is wrong here and that a runway incursion has occurred. So here you see the major benefit of this technology by providing an additional safety level, especially to airports which don't have surveillance in place, so especially smaller airports. And all those features you have seen so far have one target, and the target is to reduce the workload of the controller as much as possible and to increase the safety level for such airports. And when we are talking about very, very small airports with only little movements, then we are evaluating since a few years the possibility to control multiple airports by one single air traffic controller. And we have done 5 SESAR evaluations so far, and we have proven that one single air traffic controller is able to handle up to 3 airports at the same time. And therefore, I show you how that looks like. So here we have an example with 2 airports. So you have in the upper part the airport of Akureyri in Iceland. At the lower part there is the airport of Saarbrücken. And basically you see here also 2 or at least 1 additional safety tool. So what you see here, those animations in the green bar, is an indicator of an incoming radio call. So as soon as the controller hears an incoming radio call in the headset, he knows immediately from which airport this incoming radio call is coming from, which gives additional situational awareness. Another tool is a special planning tool. With the planning tool, the controller is able to provide or to plan the next 15 to 90 minutes to control his workload and to plan his workload. So here, with these additional safety tools, we are expecting that in a few years there is the possibility to handle multiple airports by one single air traffic controller. So I hope I could give you a brief overview about our remote tower technologies and about the features of the remote tower technologies. In my next session at 20 to 5, I will demonstrate you how the network can impact a remote tower environment. So I would be pleased if you switch in again, and for now, have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Welcome to the Dubai Airport Show. My name is Stefan Jacki and I will talk about the surveillance data chain and approach control. The surveillance data chain starts from surveillance sensors over the whole chain to the display and presentation of the data. In the first step of this data chain, we see the sensors which take the data from our environment. Then we need to distribute the data to the users and there to extract the information from the data, from the large variety of data and present it to the user. Now we are looking on each step of the surveillance chain and check what we can do here and which solutions we have for you. The first part of the surveillance chain is, as I said, sensors, and we have here a solution for ADS-B sensors and MLAT. Our MLAT, our ADS-B sensors could be used, for example, in a tower to extend the visual line of sight. So the tower could place, for example, a PRISMA system, PRISMA display to the tower controller and see far away in the area of his interest. Then we can extend the system if, for example, an SMAC system is needed and extend the one sensor to a set of sensors, make a local area multilateration system or a WAM system. This solution is called Quadrant and it's an M-grade MLAT and ADS-B sensor system. We are, of course, compliant to the different standards, like for ADS-B ground stations, multilateration, and SMACs. The advantage is that we here have a high update rate, a minimal invest in the beginning, and a small footprint of RF. Additionally, in our new version, we have a high resilience against anti-spoofing and against GPS outages. For special use cases, we are able to bring high precision timestamping to the users for additional needs. These ADS-B solutions are provided in the whole world, so we have every climate area from Iceland, for example, to the UAE, where we have very, very different temperatures and conditions. We have already 400 systems delivered. The next part of the surveillance chain after sensors is the distribution. Now you have gathered the information from primary sensor, secondary sensors, from cameras and so on, and our Quadrant solution, and this information has to be distributed to your center, to your tower, and to the place where you want to process it. For this, we have our SDSNG, Surveillance Data Distribution System, next generation, which is the most evolved Asterix engine in the world. We are operational since 1989 and have here the second generation of these systems. The important thing is it's scalable, so you can start again from a small system to a countrywide solution. The idea is that you could safe integrate your surveillance environments and that you have the full control over your data. That means, for example, you have a tower, you get your local radar, you get some other data from foreign sources, and you can combine these on a single position. Then you can transfer the data, correct it, and maybe convert it to your ATM system and use it there. The advantage, as I said, is that you can filter and send it out For example, if you want to send it to a foreign country, you can disable military flights, presidential flights, and use the capability to have the full hand on your data and control it. The idea is we get the data from the sources, put it into our network, and distribute it to the user as they need. For example, an ATC center needs the whole coverage, and tower only the area, and the recording system all data too. SDDS-NG is installed in over 40 countries, and as I said, we are in the business since 1989. The next step, when we have our data in our center, is the processing. So we make from this large amount of raw data, and we extract there the information. This is done during the data fusion and tracking. Data fusion means that we take measurements and target reports, put them into our MSDF, multi-source data fusion system, and send the data, the information out to the users. There could be a wide variety of users, for example, ATM users, SMAX users, or ADSP anti-spoofing agents. As I said, this concept is a new concept. We are able to include new technologies and include the sources you have. Additionally, we are experts in ATAS. We support ATAS for about 20 years now. And in this time, we made a lot of rollouts, we made a lot of trainings, tunings for our clients. And if you need an ATAS in your environment, please contact us. We will make the project to a success. Of course, we have integrated ATAS in all our chains so that you profit from this experience too. The last step of the surveillance chain is the presentation of the information to the user. For this, we have, for example, our PRISMA system. And this PRISMA system could be used from a small scale, like in towers, where we have a situational awareness only, where we extend the view, what the controller sees, to an outer area. Then we can use it for approach centers, where we include, for example, an arrival manager, we include the tracking, we include an OLD coordination, so that you are, and MHS, so that you are able to see in advance what happens in your area. Additionally, this PRISMA system, which I refer to, is able to optimize the management. That means your working positions could be used as a controller working position, as a replay position, or as a supervisor. So you save their equipment and resource management. At the large extent, you can use our PRISMA as a contingency and backup system in large centers. The extension for this is done by a gateway which takes the data from the main system and feeds our PRISMA to take over in case of a need. This large variety is arranged due to the possibility of a modular concept, which gives you single components which could be put together and work together fine. Good. Thank you very much for your time. I Hope you will have a nice day here or at home, and wish you all the best in health. Thank you very much.
Welcome from Dubai. My name is Peter Griedling, and today we had already a remote tower session. So this session now is more about the network topic related with remote towers. And to give you a small demonstration, what does that mean? I would like to show you a scenario where a network does not work properly at all. So what you see here in this scenario is our multi-remote tower scenario. And you will see what happens if, for example, the network connection of the upper airport has a problem. So let's start the scenario, and I think quite shortly the plane should move. So we have just to wait. So as you can remember, the network between the center and the airport is quite crucial. So if the network fails, then basically also the network can be closed. And what you see here is now you start already. You see the first obstructions, so the first network issues, and now it starts to become really worse. So here now the image transmission is really blocked and affected by the network, and that's of course something you never want to happen in a real operational environment. And so therefore we now have a look into the topic of the network. So if you just can switch to the presentation. So now we have some locations where a network is quite hard and challenging. So it can be either very remote locations with a poor bandwidth where no fiber optic is available, but also new emerging satellite constellations like Elon Musk's Starlink would enable in the future to connect remote towers via satellite network. And the big advantage of those new connectivity possibilities is that you can gain rather high bandwidth, so between 50 and 150 megabit per second. They have a low latency, between 20 milliseconds and 40 milliseconds, which enables the remote tower to be compliant regarding the standard ED240, for example. They are easy to set up, and they are also redundant in itself. So basically in the future we will see the possibility that you can connect a remote tower redundant with a redundant connection via satellite network. Also, if you have only a single landline, then a satellite connection would be the perfect fit for a redundant connectivity. But to handle that, you need a special network management system. And what we are providing is our product NetBroker, which manages the network between the airport and the remote tower center. So what does a NetBroker exactly? So basically we are splitting the different applications into service classes, and we can prioritize and measure the quality of each application independently from each other. And what you do is you define your service classes, and then you're defining how the system or the network should react if some parameters are not met. And the parameters can be the bandwidth, can be the jitter, can be the delay. So you have multiple possibilities to define that. And here you see an example of different service classes. So you see in red the operational services, and here of utmost importance, of course, is the voice communication. So the voice communication is essential. If nothing else works, then as long as the voice communication is working, you still can control the airport. But of course, the second most important application is the panoramic view. So here, the transmission of the panoramic view is essential for the operational aspect. And of course, different parameters apply to the application of a video transmission compared to the voice communication. So here you have significant differences between those applications, and it's important that you don't switch over the entire network, as it's the case in normal telco-grade applications. So here you can specifically define for each application when you want to switch over which application to which network. So in our example, we have here two different MPLS networks and a third one, a VSAT connection, and you can clearly define what needs to happen that the specific application is switched over to the network. And the big benefit is that, for example, if the network quality is too poor for the video transmission only, then you only switch over the video transmission. The voice communication and all the other applications still stay at the same network, so you don't have even not a millisecond of outage of the other services, and that's the big advantage compared to telco-grade network management systems. So basically, you have the net broker managing the network and permanently measuring the quality for each application over the network. And in our case, for example, to switch over between an MPLS network and a satellite connection, and that makes the transmission more safe and also more secure. So one of the main problems is that a network seldomly completely fails. So often it's the case that just one quality parameter slightly change, which can have a huge impact to the video transmission, for example. So in the example before, it was just a small degradation of the packet loss, which had a major impact to the video transmission. And with NetBroker, you can measure that and you can react on that. So let's take an example. So the NetBroker immediately detects that there is an increased packet loss, and when a certain parameter is not met anymore, then immediately the application, the traffic of this specific application is switched over to the other network. And with that concept, we can really meet the requirement to have an end-to-end network management system. So also it makes monitoring much more easier, because at all stages you immediately know what's going on in the network, which components are affected, and how the system should react on that specific network environment. And that's a huge benefit compared to standard telco tools, which basically do not provide ATC-grade network management. So here we have really an integrated solution of the network management system NetBroker together with the remote tower, and especially for remote locations, this is a huge benefit for the ANSPs. So now I would like to show you how the same scenario as I have shown you before would look like if we have a NetBroker in place. So therefore, we are using again the same scenario. We have again a network failure in our airport at the upper side. But you will now see the difference. So what happens if the network management system can react on such a situation properly? So again, let's start our airplane taxiing. So we have just to wait for a few seconds. So now it's starting. So and now the issue is detected, and within less than 2 seconds, automatically the system reacts on it by doing two things. He switches over to the satellite connection. Then it reduces the bandwidth of the panoramic view, and also here you can see that only the part of the image is transmitted which is absolutely needed, so basically the view on the runway. And you will see now also what happens when the system itself detects if everything is fine again. So as soon as it measures that in the MPLS network it's fine again, then the system automatically switches back to the higher bandwidth. So it uses now 10 megabits per second, and of course it transmits again the entire panoramic view to the remote tower center. And this interaction between the remote tower software and the net broker is a unique feature within the Frequentis environment. So basically, when the net broker network management system detects an issue within the network, then it communicates with the remote tower software directly, and it can control the encoding software, the encoding part of the remote tower system to react on that environment. And so here, this is a huge benefit, and the best is it's all done automated based on pre-configured system settings. So that's important. So the system does not what it wants. It just does exactly that, what you have defined, what your network technicians have defined in advance. So I hope I could give you a brief overview what our network management system NetBroker can do for you in challenging network environments. And so I hope that you are aware now that also when it comes to a safe operation, a network management system is essential for a safe remote tower operations. So that's it for today. This was the last session for today, but we are sending live tomorrow as well. So we have 4 sessions also tomorrow, providing the latest information on the remote tower, on our approach control system PRISMA, and of the tower bed. So for now, thank you very much and have a nice day. Bye-bye.